Hi, I'm Philip Bither, Curator for Performing Arts here at the Walker Art Center. And here's Radouan Mriziga, who has been with us for 4 or 5 days, just had the US debut of Akal, the third piece of a trilogy, and it's wonderful to have you have a chance to talk a little bit about the work and your work in general. It's your first chance to be here in Minnesota, Upper Midwest. We've had 2 performances. And when we first started talking and hearing more about the work, there was a sentence written in the marketing material that asked the question that we used: can you use choreography to fill the gaps in our historical memory? Would you say that that kind of summarizes what your goal for the trilogy or for Akal was? And if so, how and what?
Yeah. Hey. Yes, I think definitely it summarizes like the whole line that I'm doing around choreography, because I'm dividing my work in three lines, and one of the lines is doing work on history and how can we look at history differently, how we can tell history differently. And I think choreography can be, for me, it can be a very beautiful space to allow me think of different narratives, different tools, different ways to say a history. And this does not have to be about information. It doesn't have to be about
literal
telling of history, but it's more an experience of history, of what could be historical, of stories as well, because also it's a collection of stories, and the body itself, I think it's a beautiful archive for histories and of different people. And I think choreography and dance could be this space for this work. If we want to try to avoid the archiving in its traditional way.
Get a videotape and a score and put it in the library. This is another way of archiving.
Yeah, it's another way of experiencing what was archived, but archived not in a fixed way. I think there is a lot of speculation as well that I use in my work, a lot of imagination of what could be, what we don't know in the history, what was also excluded from the general narratives, and sometimes we really don't have even the access to what could be. So I think the space of choreography or dance can be this answer to what could be, what happened, or how it could be, or and I think also because the body or the movement I would say it's a language, it's a universal language. It also allows to say things or to invite to experience things without closing it in one narrative, because in the end, even though I use a lot of language in my work lately, in the end the movement allow interpretation and allow while the text and the linguistic gives you like direct intellectual direction to where you have to think, or and words are very, very it makes your imagination go to a specific place, while the movement let your imagination swim a little bit in all the possibilities.
In this trilogy, you're really serving history in a certain way as well. The indigenous people of North Africa, the Mriziga, have been under-recognized, if not outright oppressed, their histories have not been acknowledged, or scholars haven't really spent time because of maybe the oral history, the oral nature of the culture. You're bringing back some of that history through this work, but also looking to the future. And I wondered if you see your role as one of reclaiming lost culture, lost history, empowering history, cultural history, and bringing it more to the surface and shedding some essential light on it.
Yes, definitely. I think there is two different parts of the work. One, it is to bring back all what was ignored in our history, even in North Africa, because it was also just ignored as a culture for a long time, and also in general, how we look at North Africa, it's a very monoculture, but actually it's not true. It's very multicultural, and the Amazigh in the Mediterranean were always present and were always part of what's going on in the Mediterranean. But at certain moment they were taken away from the books and from the narrative, the general narrative. But the second thing is that me myself as an Amazigh, I am fascinated and proud of my people, because they also kept their history in a different forms, and I think that tells me and helps me to work in this way as well, because they kept their history in their language, in their storytellings, in their crafts, in their arts, so in a non-material heritage, and I think this oral culture keeps actually a healthy relation to history, I would say, because it changed and it keep looking at what happened in different perspectives, in the new times, with the different ways. So it was not never rigid, and this is what happened, and this is what didn't happen. And I think for me in this work there is two sides. One is that I want to canalize this or channel this knowledge or these epistemologies through my work, and also give something back to my people, and also to look at like a global questions through this perspective. But also I wanted to show that there is another way, which is it's also a kind of a I think all indigenous people they show us, or they teach us in general, how we can survive as well, even if we were excluded for a very long time. I think Amazigh people in North Africa, it's an example of that with all the exclusion, they keep their presence, and they keep their language, they keep their heritage, they keep their cultural heritage. So I think for me it's both. It's canalizing this knowledge and looking at this history, recalling parts, or also imagining with the audience and with the performer what it could be, what it was, or what we have as little informations, and speculate around it and make out of it another object, but also to show that these people are not only oppressed and are not only without a voice, they actually actively chose to talk about their history differently. And I think this is a beautiful and very poetic to me anyway.
Do you see it, just as you were saying that, there seems to be something of an analogy with dance itself as an art form, in that it's time-based, it's not collective, well, it's starting to be collected, but it is not something you can put on a shelf and think that it's going to be permanent forever. So dance too needs to kind of be carried forth through oral and teaching means that are time-based. And do you see yourself as part of that dance history that is trying to think about, like, is it essential just to live strongly in the moment, or is there efforts that one should be doing to preserving it, documenting it, archiving it, all those sorts of things?
Yeah, I think for me, dance and performance in general, but I would start from dance. It is something that we cannot. I mean, by its nature, you cannot stop it in one time or in one space. It goes. It's ephemeral and it keep going. And that's, I think, for me, that's also exactly the critique in the work, is that we as humans, we are obsessed with archiving and stopping things in moments and wanting, because also it's a capital. And it's a knowledge is capital, history is capital. And then I think this archiving and stopping things in moments is also about this idea of capitalizing this.
Right.
I think I like that the dance allows us to capitalize knowledge and share it, because it does not stay in one place. It does not stay in one hand. It does not stay rigid in one space and one time. But at the same time, it keeps the knowledge flowing. It's not. I think, and that's the most important in history in general, or in our history as humans or as other creatures in Earth, is that the knowledge keeps flowing. And I think the will to stop it at a certain moment and to archive it in one way, in one form, it stop it at that moment. It stop also the sharing of the knowledge, and then it become only about the capital and not about capitalizing knowledge to be shared. And I think I am rather with dance as something that should not be archived, should keep going, should be archived in our bodies as dancers and as performers, as people. And I think I have in my body dance that is from my ancestors through all the periods, through the like I don't know, the rituals, through the using the body as a tool to measure and to create spaces, through dance as a form of art, to I don't know, folklore dance, to modern dance, to contemporary dance, to different people in these places who created certain thing, and it was channeled through other people to me. And I think this is the archive, and this is, and because it keeps flowing, because this I also transmit or give to other people, or through the performance itself, or through the teaching, or through the talking, and I think this is for me, maybe I'm very romantic about the dance in general, but this is for me the beauty of dance. It's not to stop it somewhere and say this is what it was and how it should stay.
Right. Even Cunningham, who I know you just looked at our Cunningham collection.
Yeah, which was very beautiful.
Quote that which is sort of ironic, is there's a famous quote that Merce said in the 50s about, like, dance gives you nothing to hang on the wall and no script to, publish, and no. It's really what it gives you is the ecstasy of the moment you're in in the performance, and and then we collected a lot of the material related to his work, but in some ways it kind of offered us a chance to continue to think back and look forward as well around what dance was and what dance can be in the future and things.
Yes, and I was now in the Cunningham, and it was super beautiful, and I think the worker is doing like really beautiful work to collect that, but at the same time it's a collection of what was around the dance.
Yes,
and that's beautiful as well, because then you see what happened, what kind of costumes, but this is things that
it wasn't the dance itself.
The dance itself, I think it's there, it's here, it's like it's definitely through my body as well, because I guess Cunningham, other people who teach me dance passed through his teaching or his works and his inspiration, or his as an inspiration as well, and I think this this is where the dance is. Like in the Walker now, is this where really this archive, it's here, what happens tonight and yesterday. But what is down, it's what was around the dance itself.
Right.
And I think that's beautiful. I think if we manage to I guess definitely, with all my respect to the museum idea, which I have a lot of critique around it, but I think for dance and performance, we definitely have to think of a different way of archiving, and it should not be like a remaking of what happened in visual art or in cinema or in other arts.
I'm curious when you began to approach the historical trilogy and goddesses and mythological figures from your own culture, really. Was that research process something that you found benefited yourself as a person, of learning things you didn't know and deepening your own knowledge around this ancient history and these goddesses and things?
Yes, definitely. I think one of the most important things is these links between these goddesses, because the trilogy is about it's about the three goddesses, like Neith, Tanith, and Athena. And for me,
from the oldest. Well, you started with the youngest and then went to the oldest.
From the oldest. The oldest is Neith, and then Tanith, and then Athena. And also, so for me, of course, this connection and then this epistemology, it was definitely not something I was
so familiar.
Familiar with or also exposed to, because also what we have in history books or like school history books, or it's very reduced about what is this history and the complexity of it. And for me, this travel of this epistemology shows that this history is so complex and so big, and you cannot stop it in one form. And especially just looking at this epistemology or this mythology, and then how it traveled and how it collected knowledge from North Africa, but from sub-Saharan Africa through Egypt, through Tunis, and through Athens, and then how this travel of knowledge, because that's also what stays in this path, is the knowledge that that was collected and transformed and transmitted through this path. And I think that's also what interests me in the work. It's to look at history as a way of a movement of knowledge, or a history of knowledge, instead of a representation of what happened or what was there. Right.
A reimagination of what how history can be told or thought about in general. This is a slightly different topic, but since we've got the theater here right behind us, and your beautiful design of the stage floor and things, it's often been said since the earliest parts of your work is that you really are looking at architecture and space, and you happen to mention that the body and architecture you feel are intimately connected. Can you just talk about that a little bit more in depth about why you feel that?
Well, for me, first I think the environment around us define how our bodies evolve, and also we, as humans, we have always the tendency to transform what is around us and be transformed by. And I think, like, a very literal form of that is architecture. It's what the human body needs and how it needs to transform the environment around it, and what the environment impose on our creativity to make as a space. And I think for me it started as simple as that. It's that I am as a body. I need space around me to where I can feel or safe or imaginative or spiritual, and I think that's gives the human body also or ask us to do a process of then creating this space that answer these questions for even in individuals or in groups or in tribes or in nations and I think and that's like literally it shows in the architecture of places, and I think and then of course me as an individual, I grew up in Marrakesh, and for me one of the first arts that I was familiar with in Marrakesh or it was all what is in the street, like
the built environment.
Like the ones is the storytellings, is the music, is the dance, and that is not institutional, that is in the street, and then the architecture, of course, and then the architecture. It was always something fascinating to me as a way of expression also. And from there, I also, for me, it of course, it affected or not affected, but it influenced how I look at space. And then when I started to do dance and I started to do my work, the space becomes something very important in my work. So I always try to create choreography as a space experience as well, not only to look at, but also to experience, especially.
You seem to both celebrate as well as actively subvert architectural structures in a certain way. And one of the things I found fascinating, and I don't know if you can describe how you have this skill. Obviously, we knew what the work needed. We made sure that there is a space large enough for the work and things like that. But because you think so site-specifically and you really adapt your work, to make sure it is successful from your terms in any given space. But when you tour a work like a call here to the U.S., you only have 2 or 3 days. You get to a theater, and it's sort of like you have to make it work. But you've taken this McGuire Theater, and originally we imagined that this would be closed off and we wouldn't see the house and things. And you quickly kind of took the work that existed and adapted it to this space, placed some lighting imagery, some of the text strips in different parts of the theater. Was that something, is that what you always do? And do you find that you can do that you've just learned how to do that in a quick way and call a space your own by adapting your work when it's on tour into different theaters and things?
Yeah, I think it's like the first part of my work, which was very related to architecture and making spaces or collective spaces. Or I was definitely even more busy with transforming theaters and places to site-specific and to spaces of performance, of the performance I was making. So one of the things is that I got used to go to theater, because for me, when I finish the creation, I do my job as a choreographer. I create the work with the performer, and then we finish that. Later, it's a lot of work in the hand of the performer. I mean, I still follow the work, but still the performer is the guide to, and it's also the one who actually give a real meaning to the work. But my work stays always on the space. I want to create space for this. So it stays this kind of conversation between me and the performer, and it does not become only a repetitive work it's sand.
You can just go into any theater.
Yeah. So for me, I like to keep this conversation with the work and with the performer and with spaces that we go to, which is sometimes it's very very tiring because then you have to travel and then think of this.
Right.
But also, I think, and the start of this work, of course, like started with my previous works. And also the question was very simple, is that if I go to other places where there is no theaters, because theater for me as well, it's a place that it's in Morocco or it's a colonial place. It came with
especially
the colony.
The formal
the formal old theater.
Yeah.
It was brought by not all of it, but a lot of it brought by the French, and the way how they see theater, it should be for Moroccans or for
Even
people
here
in
States,
Africa.
This is a very European looking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like the big question from the beginning. Okay, this space, I like the exercise of the theater myself. I like I studied in theater. I like the exercise of theater. I like to do exercise on theater, but I don't want to be limited in this form.
Yeah.
So for me, the first question was also very, very, I would say, existential or survival. It was It was just like if I go to places with my work that there is no theaters, or there is no the infrastructure that is in Europe or in US, or in places where people does not mean to them nothing the theater as a space, but they want to see the work.
Sure.
So how could I do with this?
Yeah.
So for me, it was from the beginning. It's also, I don't know. It's like the nature of my relation to performance. I think is also because then we go back to history and to ancestral, and that it's performance is there for people, and it can happen wherever. And it's the what's most important is the happening. And then the space becomes part of the performance. And it's not that something that it's stopped in time, and then it just repeats in different.
Just turn the switch on. And it's,
So for me, that was very as like a start of thinking of how can I keep this alive. Dialogue with the theater.
You've been in so many sites and theaters. I'm just curious. You must be. I don't know if it's anxiety causing or kind of thrilling to get to a new city you haven't been. Your work hasn't. You go into a theater. You've seen pictures of it and diagrams, but you quickly, I'm sure, evaluate like, oh, well, what can we do with this? And I'm curious when you came here. This is a relatively formal theater. Did you immediately think, oh yeah, we should keep this open, or think about where you place things and how you turn this space into something kind of different than we've seen before?
Yes, definitely. I arrived, and then the first thing, that's also my habit, is the first thing I see is the building.
Yeah.
And then I start to think what we can do with the building first, to make it a space that it have different layers to different spaces.
Yeah.
So, and especially in most of my work, it's not about the illusion of the theater. So for me, what I love in the theater is the architecture of the theater.
Yeah, because you've stripped all the soft goods away. We can see all of the mechanics.
And the machinery of the theater, it's something I love so much.
Yeah.
That's I'm super fascinated with how how it's constructed. But what it creates the illusion. But not the illusion that interests me is actually the process of creating it. And they always try to bring it to the work. So it keeps this. There is a movement as well in the work in relation to the building itself.
And I'm also curious to hear. All the audience is in one row. Everyone can see each other except for maybe the people on your sides. Was that a conscious and important part, that the audience is not all separated, not looking at each other at all, but just at the performer, but that actually the audience are almost part of the performance in a certain way?
Yeah, I think it's because it's also about Earth. So I think I wanted to bring something, also have to reflect of being together, of being on the same place, on being on the same planet, and also to be surrounding this. Dorothy for me also is like for me it is also a representation of Earth, or a representation of like and I think for me this relation to Earth it also passed through us as bodies and humans, and I think being around the performer, being under the lights, looking at each other, also being very transparent to each other, like knowing that we are there, we are welcomed in this space, and we are also asked to just follow and the guidance of Dorothée. I think this is for me have also to do with us as human in relation to each other, but also in relation to the environment, and also of course in relation to the planet itself. And so for me that's why I also want for this piece I wanted to be more closer to the performer, more closer to each other.
Right.
While the first part of the trilogy, where actually I used the theater as really the theater as something very far. It's because it's also about the sun.
Yes.
So the performer actually.
The piece on Athena. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
And also in space, it's the further from North Africa, and also so I used also the theater as a way to keep this object like far,
right.
And to recall this relation to the sun, or and then the moon. It's always a circle or a half circle, and it's a structure in a way that it's a moon structure, and also it's a little bit futuristic in how or it calls this idea of future.
Is that a physical built sort of like structure? I've seen images. That,
it's a physical built structure from recycled cardboard and plastic bottles. That it gives a little bit like a feeling of it's something futuristic. Also, it's related to the moon shape, but also related to, I don't know if you know that there is this architecture, Amazigh architecture in Tunis, in Tataouine, that it's a little bit round, or looks like where actually the Star Wars happened.
Oh,
and
really?
Like,
yes.
And then it was always like used as this idea of it's another space happening in another world. It's like almost futuristic and mythologic. I wanted to take that as well, to bring it as a reference, and to because also the moon is something we almost know, but it's also far, and we have this like closer imagination about it than other planets. Or,
yes, men have landed on it. And things like that.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's why also these spaces are chosen in a different way.
Right. Speaking of Dorothée, it's a wonderful performance that she gives. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your working together, and you know how much the work involves beautiful movement, text, song, stomping, drumming, lots of forms of communication. And was that all part of the design before you selected her to perform it, or did you work on that together to create the ultimate forms of communication that she delivered in this piece?
I think first I knew that this performance will have a lot of singing, because I worked with text through the three performances in different ways. So the first one, it was more movement. The first one, as little bit of text, little bit of singing, and always there is a rap song in each of them.
In each of them? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then the second one, it was all poems, and sorry.
Dorothée is an artist who I have only seen in performing her theatrical work, which is very powerful and moving. I didn't know of her work until I started researching after we made this commitment around her really accomplished work as a singer, and then also as a mover. The movement that she, especially at the start of the work, that she's executing almost seem like they are drawn from ancient reliefs, sculptural pieces from antiquities of Neath, you know, and she seems to embody this kind of both dignity as well as power and fierceness of Neath, the goddess. Was that language things that you had already researched and drawn from and then brought to her very specifically, and exactly the arm and hand gestures and the foot movements and everything, or did you more sort of generally describe what you were looking for and then she kind of made that happen?
No, I think in the beginning what I knew is that I will have a lot of singing in the
and
performance.
you knew
And I knew she's a singer.
Yeah.
So I never saw before Dorothée performing. Later I saw her, but I knew of her work. I knew of her name. I also, when I met her, I was very fascinated of how much knowledge she held, and also after I checked, and I found that she also she's like multidisciplinary artist and super talented. So I had all this background before we start. But the idea was is that to have more of a concert performance with poems and songs, and then the movement itself. It was because in the whole trilogy there is a similarity of the vocabulary.
Oh, okay.
First, there is a body work that I do in general in all my work, that I always invite people to do it with me during the moment of research, and so we find the vocabulary together. And then there is the material of the dance that is created by the other performers, and this also the three performers they learned from each other material.
Right.
And then there
Did it build on itself? You mean the second performer in part two learned from the movement, not maybe directly from the performer themselves, but just from, or did they actually
from the performer themselves.
Really? Okay.
So Maite in the first first we created movement together, and then she taught it to Sundus, and then with Sundus we created another movement, and then she taught it to Maite, and they brought it to Dorothée because she came later in the process. But then Dorothée, before that, she created a song actually for Maite. So there is this also this idea of knowledge and memory and body archiving in each other and transforming the material. And then after there is of course the material of visual material, representation of these goddesses, which is we used a lot as a vocabulary as well. And then there is something that I use also as a specific way to create a movement, which it's tasks of creating movement, and then I ask them to create in a way, and then I follow like with the performers, like on working on the shapes and the movements and the quality, and like we keep doing that, almost as a sculpture, I would say, and until we agree that's what it should be. So there is a lot of so I would say I come with a quite clear idea of what the performance will be, and then how it will be, what kind of movement, what kind of body work. but then in the making, we keep like a talk, and then I'm also very open to like change things or to listen to the proposition of the performance in general.
I was just going to ask, since it's right here with us, you personally, you've always, I think since your earliest work, since '55, you've used some sort of floor design and lines, and here you've got these beautiful green, yellow, red, and blue colors in overlapping triangles. Is there anything you would want to say about how you determined? I know there's a system and there's a numerology related to this piece of in your 9 cycle, but the colors I never had a chance to ask you. Like when I think of the flag of the Mriziga people, it's yellow, green. There's green and red, isn't there? In there?
Yeah, exactly.
Was that intentional, or?
Yes, it was intentional to call this reference, but also what means the reference. What is more important for me as well, because the colors in the flags means because it's blue, green, yellow. And means the sea, the mountains, and the forest, and then the desert. So it's like the 3 parts where the Amazigh people live. And then the red is human, is the human. In general. Yeah. So these colors anyway, like these 3 landscapes and these colors, it's something that comes a lot in my work in general. And I intentionally make these patterns as a reference to that. Yeah.
Speaking of the Amazigh people, you know, there's a great, it seems, but correct me if I'm wrong, there's such a connection to the earth, to nature, to animal life, to a sustainable way of living, given the nomadic history and nature of being so dependent on and connected with the land. And we're at a point in our human existence where the questions of our sustainability on the planet is really threatened. It's quite up for questions, and people are starting to look to indigenous cultural traditions as possibly a way forward, a way to rethink the way our relationship with the planet. Do you feel, is that part of a seed of the hope for a future, or do you feel like that's a kind of unreasonable expectation, given that the West has done so much damage already to the climate and to the earth as already? But do you see your work as part of a kind of sustainable? You talked about it in the dance and in the relationship to architecture, but in terms of just earth sustainability in general.
Definitely, I think for me also what's important in this knowledge, or the indigenous knowledge in general, but also I would talk from Amazigh perspective, is that there is still a very important relation to earth and to the environment, to the relation to nature and to other animals and to other beings. And I don't think we are going back to that, because I don't think that there is this linear relation of time, that it's something old and something new. I think we stay in that, and then we just forgot it, and we look at some other places, or we use knowledge in one way. We reduced what does it mean important knowledge, and we put a hierarchy of what is knowledge. And I think maybe we did a mistake in choosing that's the important knowledge. And I think the other paths, they stayed surviving, and they kept dealing with their environment and their questions in their way. And I think now we look to them or we see in them as something future. But I think it's not even about, for me, it's not even about the future itself. It's just about changing how we think about doing things in general now. And it's not, because I don't want to have this exotification romantic of these cultures, because they are not something, and they are not like the answer of what the West did, it's not that, because we cannot also put suddenly the responsibility on these people and be like, this should work. I think it's just, maybe it is important and it is necessary to look at this form of using knowledge and being linked to the environment and take from it lessons or to collaborate with, and to think how we can go back a little bit from our way towards the catastrophe. I think maybe that's I would say that this is how my work is. It's also just taking and finding ways to open these doors of looking through knowledge from different perspectives, and to question these hierarchies of knowledge, to question also the way we think what makes something relevant and something irrelevant. I think this is, for me, what's the question really in going back or in looking at this way of living. And I think this is maybe something also, I think, through because of Corona, but also because of different things before Corona. I think also this question of sustainability, our space, Earth, our people, the other beings with us, the environment. I think it's very necessary to that it become an important part in my creation anyway. So that's why also in the whole trilogy, the question, of course, in Akal it's even bigger, because then the question is really Earth, coming from the sun, the moon, and Earth. I think, but also I think myself growing up or with all what happens from Tafukt to Akal, then I got even more and more focus on
just
these
in
questions.
Those 2 years,
it's 3 years. And then more focus in this question and be more. I want to include it more in my concepts and my works in general. And I am like now in the future part
with your
of
next cycle that you're looking at.
The next cycle. The first 3 pieces is really like the mountain, the desert, and the sea. So it's all about actually ecosystems and landscapes and relation to Earth and to landscapes and to nature.
Well, Radouan, that's, I think, a great thinking about the future, your next cycle. I want to thank you for opening up for us the world of dance and performance, the sense of space, and just to bring you and Dorothée the power of this Akal performance has been beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank people in the Walker and the space to allow us to share this work with audience here, because I think in the end also we do work to share it with people, and it's always beautiful to be in elsewhere to do this. I think it's a privilege, and I think it's always with the help of people like you, Philip, or spaces like this.
Well, thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.